This is the Graceful Atheist Podcast, a part of the Atheist United Studios podcast network. Welcome to the Graceful Atheist Podcast. My name is David, and I am trying to be the Graceful Atheist. Thank you to all my patrons on patreon.com. If you too would like an ad-free experience of the podcast and receive the occasional bonus episode, please become a patron at any level on patreon.com/gracefulatheist. Our Facebook group, Deconversion Anonymous, is trying to be a safe place to land for those people who are doubting, questioning, deconstructing, and even deconverting. Please join us at facebook.com/groups/deconversion. Special thanks to Mike T for editing today's show. On to today's show. Arlene interviews our guest today, David Hayward, the Naked Pastor. David deconstructed very early relative to the rest of us, suffered the pain of leaving ministry, and has since become an artist and an author. He is very well known for the cartoons that he draws that are biting commentary on the church, as well as freeing and embracing the diversity of humanity. David has written a number of books, including a book for partnerships that have a disparity in faith or lack thereof called Till Doubt Do Us Part. His most recent book is called Flip It Like This. It's a book of cartoons, some of his great work. One of his earlier works I also really appreciate is called Questions Are the Answer. You can find David at nakedpastor.com. There'll be links in the show notes for his website and his books. Here is Arlene interviewing David Hayward.
Hi, David. Welcome to the Graceful Atheist Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on your show. Good to be here. Nice to meet you, Arlene.
Nice to meet you. I'm excited. I've followed your work on Instagram over the past couple of years, and it's funny, it's clever, and it is extremely timely often, and I'm always impressed with the work that you do. I've learned a lot also.
I appreciate that. Thanks very much. It's good to hear some positive things back from people that, I'm doing some work that people appreciate. I don't always hear it that way, but I'm really grateful when I do.
Yes, I can imagine the pushback that you would receive for some of your work.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
but the way we always begin is just tell us about the spiritual environment of your childhood.
I grew up in I would say a Christian home. When I was born, I was baptized Anglican when I was a baby. I'm in Canada, so that would be,
Okay.
if you're in the States, I would be Episcopal. And I grew up in a home where my father worked for the Ontario Provincial Police, where he was transferred quite a bit every couple of years. So we moved a lot in Ontario, Canada, and so we never gravitated towards the same church denomination. We just went to whatever was convenient and closest, or most fun, or most truthful, or what. So I grew up in a home that was Christian, but at the same time not devoted to any one denomination. And some people think that's a handicap, but for me, I saw it as an advantage, where I didn't feel like I needed to stay in the Anglican Church or wherever I ended up. And I always found myself gravitating towards churches that I felt had the most space for me to grow and to become my most authentic self. And even as a pastor, I found myself gravitating towards churches that were a good environment for me and my family to become our truest selves. So, I was, like I said, we were Anglican. We went into the United Church. We were in the Catholic Church. We were in the Baptist Church, Pentecostal Church. I went to a Pentecostal Bible college. I went to an evangelical seminary, got my master's. I got ordained as a Presbyterian minister, and then I switched to Vineyard, which is where I ended my ministry. And Vineyard, for people who don't know, is kind of it's an evangelical movement, kind of a mixture of Baptist teaching and Pentecostal kind of experience. So that's where I ended up. And I I met my wife at Bible college. We served in the ministry together for many years, roughly 30 years. And then I left the ministry in 2010 and decided to see if I could make my blog, Naked Pastor, a full-time gig. And it worked. So that's what I do now.
Wow, very cool. So, was there anything specific that led you out of ministry, or was it just that seemed to be the next right choice for you?
Well, it did feel like the right choice, but it was because I no longer felt I had the freedom to grow where in the direction I wanted to grow. So um, I was starting to get, phone calls from head office and things suggesting I tone down my cartoons or my my
Ah,
blog posts and maybe run things through them first for approval. And that's just not the way I live my life. My most fundamental drive, I think, is personal freedom to be who I am. And, that was a huge uh, infringement on that personal freedom of mine, even as a pastor. That started happening in around 2009. And then in 2010 was when I finally realized I had to go my own way.
so you were already writing, you were already drawing. Were you
Yes.
already like on Instagram? See, I am as of 2020 was when I was like, I don't think I, well, 2019, I don't think I believe all this stuff anymore. And my husband realized he couldn't believe in 2017, and that sent me on a journey. And then 2019. And so that's when I first even got on the internet. Well, not on the internet, but on social
Right.
media to be like, am
Right.
I the only person who's gone through this? So it's only been a few years that I'm familiar with your work, but all the way back to 2010 or before that, you were already online
Yeah.
and your church people
Yeah.
didn't love your online presence.
Well, I started blogging as nakedpastor.com in 2000, sorry, 2005. I
Okay,
started
wow.
blogging.
Wow.
Yeah, around 2004, 2005, I started blogging as Naked Pastor. And at that point, I'd already been painting and stuff, but I would post written blog posts and I would share my paintings, landscapes mostly. And it was in 2006, I think, where I'd been following a cartoonist online and I thought it just suddenly dawned on me, hey, why don't I try drawing cartoons and see what happens? And they took off. And so I decided to make cartoons my primary means of communication. And, it's a lot of fun. I thought it would last maybe a month because I challenged myself to draw one every day until I ran
Mhm.
out of ideas. But here I am, many, many years later, still drawing cartoons and pissing people off.
I love it. I love it. Pissing people off and also making the rest of us go like, that is such a clever way to say that. Like that's exactly what I was thinking. And it's so concise and
Yeah.
it's in my personal opinion way more interesting than like a tweet where it's just words, but like the pictures are fantastic. Going back, where did Naked Pastor? Where did the moniker come from?
I started out as davidhayward.ca, which stands for Canada. And then I thought that's kind of boring. And I really wanted .com. And so I called my blog churchpundit.com. And after a while, I thought, gee, that sounds kind of pretentious and kind of boring. And so for some reason, I searched for nakedpastor.com because at that time, like the Naked Chef,
Oh
the
yeah.
Naked Archaeologist, the Naked Truth, all that was kind of cool. And I had inadvertently entered into a auction for the URL pastor.com
Okay.
because some months later I got an email saying congratulations, you won the auction, and my stomach just dropped because I thought, oh no, how much,
Yeah.
and it was
Oh, that's true.
like $70, like nobody wanted
Oh,
it, right? But I got nakedpastor.com because I was a pastor at the time and blogging. There were a lot of pastors blogging at the time and, talking about theology and about their church services and their sermons and their premium coffee and donuts and, Bible studies and home groups and leaders and worship, all that stuff. And I wanted to pull back the curtain and let people see what the life of a real pastor is like. I wanted to be totally transparent and honest and vulnerable and open. And so that's why I chose Naked Pastor. It's just me being totally out there, unadorned and raw and real. And, for the first while, I mean, I started in absolute oblivion, like nobody'd heard about me or anything. And even my own congregation was like, why would we read your blog when we have to listen to you every week already anyway? So um, I was under the radar for many years, but it was when I started drawing the cartoons and they started to get noticed. And you know, I was a little bit, you might call, progressive in my thinking, and might have been associated with progressive Christianity at that time. But in 2009, I had a profound sort of epiphany moment where it was a very mystical experience. No,
Mhm.
no chemicals or mushrooms involved. It was just me. I just had a moment where I saw the connectivity and the oneness, the unity of all things. It was just a profound instant where I just saw the unity of everything, and that there's one reality that we all share, but we all have different perspectives and opinions and descriptions of that one reality. And I just sort of naively started sharing that in my blog. That's when I started getting in trouble because
Oh,
it was being interpreted that I was deviating away from orthodoxy at that point.
naturally.
And yeah, naturally. And I was a bit naive because for me, it was a very profound, liberating experience where from that moment on, I experienced profound peace of mind that I'd been seeking for my whole life. And I finally experienced that peace of mind, theologically speaking, everything was at rest. And I was excited to share this experience of peace of mind and freedom. But it made quite a few people unhappy.
Mm.
And it was in 2009 when I started getting in trouble and people started expressing concern, and I knew my time was up. And sure enough, it was a year later when I left.
So what did leaving the ministry look like? Was that like leaving belief, Bible, God, like, because I've heard
Okay.
Derek Webb has said before,
Yeah.
we deconstruct different things, but that does, the God of the Bible or church, and there's so many different things, but none of it necessarily leads to any specific place. So I'm curious, like, what did that look like?
I really agree with what you just said. Uh, Deconstruction doesn't necessarily lead you to any certain place, and I emphasize that all the time because there is quite a few movements out there trying to steer people to a certain conclusion. And that to me undermines the whole purpose of deconstruction, which is basically questioning your beliefs and becoming spiritually independent. So, and by spiritual, I'm not necessarily invoking any divinity or supernatural. When I say spiritual, I'm talking about the inner life of a person, which includes mental, emotional, psychological, everything. All that combined, to me, is spiritual. It's kind of in the kind of a Jungian kind of a feel to it to me. Yeah. So I believe, and I've said this for a long time, I think for Christians or believers, there's two different deconstructions. One is theological and one is ecclesiological. So there's the theological deconstruction when you question your beliefs, and you know, it's kind of like the blue or the red pill to see how far down the rabbit hole you go. And you can keep going. The other one is ecclesiological, where you deconstruct your relationship to the church. And so my observations are that people who deconstruct ecclesiologically don't necessarily deconstruct theologically. So I know a lot of people who left the church who are just as dogmatic and fundamental as they were in the church.
Mm-hmm.
People who deconstruct theological, often their relationship with the church has to change.
That makes
Uh,
sense. Yeah.
yeah. It's like any relationship, really. Like, I'm assuming you're still married. I'm married. When I change my mind about very important issues, it affects the relationship. So it's the same with people when they change their minds theologically. It's going to affect their relationship to the church. So for me, 2009, that moment, profound flash of insight moment for me was the conclusion or the culmination of decades of theological anguish. It's for me, my deconstruction started way back in seminary when I started questioning the inspiration of scripture. And it took that long for everything to it was kind of like the final piece of a 1,000-piece puzzle just sort of snapped into place. The picture came into view and it was done. Then I had to leave the ministry, which meant leaving the church for me. And that was a whole other ball of wax. That happened pretty quickly, but my theological deconstruction took decades, whereas my ecclesiological deconstruction happened overnight. And then it took Lisa and I a couple of years to find our feet again. It was a really rough period of time. To the point now where we're doing great. We're better than we've ever been, ever. But it took a lot of negotiating to figure out how to navigate those really, really tumultuous times.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can empathize. My husband, we met in college ministry like that. So like
Oh,
we were Calvinists. So it's like John Piper, Mark Driscoll, Matt Chandler.
ooh,
That's our
oh,
world for a long time.
oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh.
wow.
Neither of us grew up in the church, so we at least had some sense of self when we became Christians. So we didn't have I've
Mm,
interviewing people and just getting to know people, the things people have to pull apart from what they were taught when they were little tiny kids. I mean, it's just this whole
yes,
other experience.
yes.
But our everything was based off of Jesus and the church and all that. And then 2017, we become parents and just things start changing for him to where
Mm,
he's like, I don't think I can believe in the God of the Bible anymore. And I'm like, so yeah, that tumultuous time where it's like the I was told, marry a godly man, find my Boaz, like and then everything will just go wonderfully and at least, just so many promises that they make you. And they do
yeah.
say, marriage isn't for making you happy, it's for making you holy and all this stuff, but it was still like I just had expectations that we were always going to be Christians.
Man, I got to write that.
Oh,
I got to make a cartoon out of that. I'm sorry.
oh yes, some of the little one-liners that pastors can come up with.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I can empathize with just that time of being married, and things are just so vastly different than you ever expected. And it
Hmm.
was scary for us. It was about 2 years
Yep.
before I was like, and he never tried to deconvert me. Like it was never like evangelizing for not believing. It was just, I just had to figure out, well, especially being Calvinist, he can't lose his salvation. So like, what has happened? So yeah, I can
Yeah.
empathize with that experience.
It was such a profound experience for Lisa and I that I wrote a book about it called "Till Doubt Do Us Part: When Changing
Oh, wow.
Beliefs Change Your Marriage."
Oh,
And
wow. Mhm.
yeah, because it's happening a lot. There's not many resources out there for couples. Most books for marriage are you need to be compatible, you need to believe the same things and hold the same values.
Yes.
Whereas Lisa and I suddenly we're not on the same page anymore. Are we even in the same chapter? Are we in the same book? Are we in the same library? So like it was really difficult to figure out how to be married again.
Yes, we will make sure all of your resources are in the show notes. We have a Facebook group, Deconversion Anonymous, is the name of it. It's based off the episodes that we do.
Cool.
And there are lots of, for want of a better term, unequally yoked marriages. And
Oh,
we have people who one has deconverted, the other hasn't. And it's hard for the believing spouse to understand. We have at least one person in the group who is still a Christian, but their spouse has deconverted. And he was just looking for like somebody else who no longer believes. I'm not sure how he found the Facebook group, but who no longer believes, to help him understand his wife. It's so hard on marriages. It's so hard on both people. Now we only usually have one or the other in the group, but yeah,
Yeah.
there aren't a lot of resources. You're exactly right. There aren't.
Yeah. But I think it's a great opportunity for us to grow as individuals when
Mhm.
our spouses change on such a dramatic level. Like Lisa and I, we've been married now. We're going on 43 years. Holy smokes.
Very nice.
And we, like I said, are better now than we've ever been
Mhm.
because, we grew along side by side for so many years. And we were serving in the church together. And it was kind of like our lives were kind of mirroring each other. And
Mhm.
then um, when that happened, though, she decided to go to university. She was 48 years old. She decided to go to university and get a nursing degree. And so she's a nurse now. And I decided I went and taught at a university for a couple of years. And then it was in 2012 when I thought, I'm going to see if I can make a pastor go. And it worked. But
Mhm.
our lives now were so very, very different, and our beliefs were different and everything. So it was tricky. But we had to come to the realization that it wasn't compatibility of belief that held us together. That wasn't the glue. We always kind of assumed it was.
Mhm. Yeah.
The glue was love and mutual respect and wonder and appreciation for this person who isn't exactly like you. And
Mhm.
that for me is what made our marriage better.
Mm. David Ames, the main interviewer, the actual graceful atheist. That's his moniker. He and his wife. She is still a believer, and he has said the same thing. He's like, it's love, it's respect, it's honoring and loving her whole self, and
Mm-hmm.
she loving him. Not like, because we were told in the my husband and I were told in the church that yes, Jesus and you having the same beliefs, even very particular theological agreements,
Yes.
is what's
Yeah.
going to hold you together. And so when you don't have that, you think, oh no, there isn't anything left. And
Yeah.
then you slowly, for me, I just watched Donnie be the same, my husband be the same person he'd always been. And I was like, this, nothing, our values haven't changed. Nothing has
Right.
changed. I expected things to get crazy, but yeah, you're exactly right. It's respect and love.
Yeah. It goes back to that vision I had in 2009 or experience where I saw the oneness of all things, that there's one reality, but not a zillion thoughts.
Mm.
And so when Lisa changes her thoughts, she's still Lisa,
Hmm.
kind of like the river out front of my house. It's very deep and wide, and at a deep level, it's still the Kennebecasis River. The surface changes all the time, but that doesn't change the fact that it's still the same river. And so, our beliefs are like that. I think they're constantly changing and moving. Our thoughts are changing and moving,
Hmm.
and but at a deep and fundamental level, I'm still me, and Lisa's still her.
Hmm.
I remember the first time I saw Lisa in Bible college, walk into the cafeteria. It was like, it wasn't, oh my goodness, she believes in the substitutionary atonement. Just, it was totally different. The attraction that happened had
Hmm.
nothing to do with theology or belief.
Hmm.
Um, that came later, but um, we got back to that primary wonder for each other, and which comes before belief.
Mm, yes, because you
Yeah.
don't know anything about her when you first meet someone. You
Oh, that's
just.
yeah. I mean, isn't that marriage though? When you marry someone, you're not saying, "I'm going to marry you, never change." Basically, you're saying, "Never grow, never become more self-aware, never peel back the layers of your own onion within to become a
Mhm.
deeper person, because I won't be able to handle it." It's the opposite. It's like you go deeper into yourself and become more self-aware and more of a individuated person, more of an authentic individual, and I will love that. I will love you for that. And And so that to me is what marriage is.
Hmm.
It's the agreement for each of us to grow and to make space for one another and constantly adapt to that growth.
Yes, I agree completely. 21-year-old Arlene should not be in 40-year-old Arlene's body doing
Yeah,
life.
yeah,
Absolutely not. Oh
yeah,
heavens, poor little young us.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Thinking back to that time, that hard time when y'all were married, and for people who are listening, what are some of the things that you guys found to be most helpful when you had differing beliefs?
Well, there's the obvious ones, and that is therapy, finding a good
Ooh.
counselor,
Mhm.
or for us also, I believe in the value of a good coach if you can find one. They're more expensive,
Oh,
but
okay. Mhm.
yeah, if you can find one, that's good as well. Um, Hopefully, you've got a few friends around that love you both
Mm.
and can provide a safe space for you guys. Um, and then there's each other. And this is the hard part. This is where you sit down with one another and you have the hard conversations.
Mm.
And the very uncomfortable, squirming kind of conversations. And so that to me is the most important thing. Like Lisa and I went into this transition, this traumatic transition, kind
Mhm.
of with tools in our belt already. We'd already been to marriage retreats and marriage weekends, and we'd already been for marriage counseling several times, and we've read a lot of books on marriage and relationships and love, and had already got our communication skills down so that when we went into this situation, we weren't caught off guard completely unarmed. We had tools at our disposal. I remember a few years ago, this was before COVID, we were in a room with a bunch of couples and ended up talking about marriage for some reason or whatever. And I said, well, has anybody here been to like a marriage weekend or a marriage retreat? No, nobody been to a marriage. Well, anybody here been for marriage counseling? Nobody. Well, has anybody here read a book on marriage? Nobody. So when a crisis comes to their relationship, they're totally unprepared.
Mm.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like you learn the skills of how to be married. Hopefully, you have those skills before a crisis. It's hard to, as they say, drain the swamp when you're up to your ass in alligators.
That's very true. So my first thought is
Yeah,
the hubby and I had also been to marriage retreats, and
right.
we had read the book. Well, I had read the books. He's not a book reader. I had read the books and then give him the, too long didn't read kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
there are some problematic things in Christian marriage
Oh
books.
yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes.
So are you saying like just the basic things that are this is universally probably helpful in interpersonal relationships, communication, listening, all those kinds of things. Like just having those tools
Yeah. So when people ask now about marriage books, I recommend mine for one.
naturally.
Uh, part. But then there's people like David Schnark who wrote Passionate Marriage, which is, I think, the best book on marriage out there. There's
Mhm.
Esther Pearl.
Esther,
She,
yes, she's fantastic.
yeah. There's Gabor Mate. There's other people writing about relationships out there who I recommend to people. It's really it's just about being interested in human growth and makeup and psychology and depth. Even reading Carl Jung and dream interpretation and um, understanding the anima and the animus and the female aspect for the male and the male aspect for the female and all that. All those kinds of things are just little tools that we use to understand ourselves better, the shadow side of ourselves, for example, learning how to integrate that rather than reject that, like Christianity tends to want to do. So yeah, there's a lot of books out there, and, and and a lot of information to help people in their marriage relationships or significant other relationships. Yeah. And so, like the David Schnark book, Passionate Marriage, it's been around for many years, but it's one that I recommend all the time. And even if you just read that one and study it intently, it's you're 90% there. It's just a fantastic resource.
And I wasn't expecting to have a whole lot of this discussion, but how about for
Hmm.
couples? I've seen different discussion in our Facebook group. One of them is like, oh well, you have deconverted or I have deconverted and I don't want to do this anymore. Now,
Right.
whether there's more to it, we don't know. That just seems to be something
Yeah.
that's been brought up where one spouse is like, this can't work because you're not a Christian or I'm not a Christian
Right.
anymore.
Right. So, one of the big things that we do when we deconstruct, if we keep going in the deconstruction or the deconversion direction, is we demystify everything. Everything
Hmm.
has to be demystified, demagicalized. I don't know what the word is. Desupernaturalize everything.
Hmm.
For many of us Christians, we grew up in a Christian culture or became absorbed in a Christian culture that said marriage is forever,
Mm.
and God's blessing and God and all this stuff, and it was all very scary, sacred. You couldn't even have sex with somebody because they would take part of your soul with them, and uh, save yourself for your spouse because otherwise you're giving your soul, parts of your soul away to all this magical thinking, right? So one of the
Hmm.
things we do when we deconstruct is that magical thinking has to go. And there's another book too, Joan Didion, The Year of Magical Thinking. Fantastic book.
It's on my TBR list, actually.
Oh, it's so good. And where she spent a whole year. She lost her husband. She spent a whole year magical thinking, and that book meant so much to me because it described my deconstruction that
Oh,
I could find
wow.
it. I've never seen a miracle, and I grew up in a Christian culture that believed in miracles. So I could say I've never. No, sorry, I have never seen a miracle. Um, and I've seen people say, "Oh, my head suddenly feels a little bit better." That. So, oh, suddenly my right nostril, I can breathe through my right nostril. Those I see that all the time. But I've never seen a real miracle. And so just that kind of thing. So it's the same with marriage, where
Hmm.
I really do believe a lot of couples come to that place where they start deconstructing, or one does and the other doesn't, or whatever, and they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And when you remove that magic, the sacredness, the holiness, God, divinity, all this kind of scary punishment and eternal torment, when you remove all that, it might make absolute sense at that moment for them to go their separate ways. Some couples got married because they were prophesied to that they should get married. Some
Yeah.
couples got married because that was the only way they could have sex. Some
Yep.
some couples got married because their parents made an agreement, and they get to the point where they're saying, i I'm not invested in this. I don't really love you the way I think I should love you. And so some people are married that shouldn't be,
Hmm.
and there's some people who are married that don't have to be, and then there's some people who are married who go through this struggle
Hmm.
where they want to remain married, but they don't know how. I want to help those couples do that.
Mm,
So
yes.
my book, I do have a few chapters in there about, maybe it is time to go your separate ways, and that's okay. That's totally okay.
Hmm.
And that's fine. It could be heartbreaking for one or the other, but yeah, that happens a lot.
Yeah. So you
Mm.
are pastor turned artist. you're doing your drawings, time is
Mhm.
going by. Even after you've left the church, like, are your beliefs still changing? Like, are you what do you believe now? I was thinking back to all the cartoons I've seen, and I was like, I have no idea. I know he's calling out the church and calling in the church, and it's fabulous. I have no idea what this man believes. So I was curious, what, where are you
Yeah.
now spiritually? Like, what,
So
or is there a label?
no, there's not a label. I don't label myself because
Nice. Mm-hmm.
the can of food is very comfortable with its contents.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't need the label.
It
It
doesn't
knows
need
what
a
it
label.
is. It could be Irish stew, let's say, and just totally comfortable with being whatever. The label is for other people that they slap
Mm.
on so they
Mm-hmm.
can identify who you are and put you in the right place on the shelf. And we do that with human beings. We slap a label on people so we know where to put them, how to talk with them, or not.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I don't. I don't use a label. I say my home is in Christianity, but I have cottages everywhere. I also
Ooh.
say I have Christianity is in my DNA. I mean, I was baptized when I was a baby in the Anglican Church. I was circumcised by a Jewish rabbi when I was 8 days old.
Wow.
My parents were very, very religious, and all like I grew up in that whole culture. But so it's in my DNA. I also say I appreciate my roots, but I'm not going to let them limit me. So
Mm.
I'm at that place, like I said, when that happened to me in 2009, realizing that there's one reality with many experiences and interpretations of that. To say I'm a Christian is basically to cut myself off from all of those other interpretations and expressions and articulations of one reality. I feel I'm more at one with everyone, and for me, Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, Jewish, atheist, they're all just perspectives on the same one reality. And some might feel one's more right than the other, but no one has a corner on the truth. No one has the whole pie. They're all different interpretations of this one reality. This one reality is the pie, and we all are somewhere in there. And so when somebody says, "Are you a Christian? Yes or no?" I'm saying, "Well, let's unpack that. Like, what does that mean?" And immediately, most people are like, "Oh, okay, you're fudging. You're getting squirmy. You're like Jello, trying to nail Jello to the wall." Because most people who are believers need that yes or no.
Yes.
Whereas most people who aren't, they're agnostic or they're atheist
Mhm.
or whatever. They don't need that yes or no as much.
Mhm.
Uh, so for me, I'm also there's another reason too. I want to be very careful. So yeah, on the one hand, I do not have a statement of faith. I could not write a theology book because it isn't the true expression of myself or what I think best reflects reality. But also, I don't want people to say, "I believe what David Hayward believes." I follow David Hayward, or the
Yes.
Naked
Yes.
Pastor. So I really avoid um, providing anything that could cause somebody to want to do that.
Mhm.
So, there's people out there writing theology or spirituality, and people say, "I'm going to follow them. I like the way, you know." And for me, because what is at the core of I said this earlier, my fundamental drive is I want to be free to be my authentic self. And so how that interprets it in the world is I want you, I want Arlene to have the freedom to be her authentic self. Wherever that ends up, you could end up a Calvinist again, or a believer, or a not believer, or an atheist, or what. I do not care. I honestly don't care, and I honestly don't think it matters in the great scheme of things. What matters is that you made that freedom to be who you are freely. That to me
Mm.
is what's the most important thing, no matter where you end up. And so when I talk about deconstruction, I'm very, very careful to um, emphasize that this is your journey. You're taking the steering wheel of your own life and you get to drive wherever you want.
Hmm.
That to me is the most important thing.
I love that.
Yeah, a lot of people find that really encouraging. They're like,
Hmm.
you're right. I feel I'm free. I can decide how to be spiritual or not. But for other people find it very, very frustrating because a lot of people want directions. They want a map with a destination.
Hmm.
That to me is not life.
No, no, I can agree now. No, used to I needed someone to like lead me and tell me maybe what to believe. Maybe that really was part of it, just what to believe,
Yep, yep.
and give me the Bible study and all the things. And I've heard this from other people as well. Leaving the church, leaving Christianity, it's like, oh crap, I have to figure out like what I believe. What are my values? What does like I love the little like devotional size kind of books. I was like, I didn't know the word day book. I was like, I don't, what do I read in the morning? Do I have to read things in the morning? I mean, it was just so many little things and huge things. How are we going to parent the boys? We have two boys.
Yeah,
You have to figure it out on your own. And
yeah.
it's a lot. It's wonderful, but it can be a lot. I can see people being like, you know what, I'm just going to go back and be in my little square, and they tell me what to do and what to think. Like,
Happens all the time. It's like when we left home. I remember when I first left home when I was 18. I went to college. It was very exciting. It was a lot of fun, but I had to learn how to, pay bills, buy groceries, make a home, you know,
hmm,
meet women, get married, figure out how to, all that stuff, and
all
it's
this
very
stuff. Mhm.
intimidating and scary, and it's the same spiritually, where we get to that point where we need to be able to take care of ourselves, and decide and this to me is where the church has really dropped the ball. When it insists it knows how you should be living, and the church loves nothing better than to hear you say, "I need you to tell me what to believe and how to
Mm,
live my life." Um, that to me is the exact opposite of spiritual maturity, where we say, "I'm going to decide how to be spiritual. Thanks very much." It's like walking into a buffet. You get to decide what to eat. You know by now what's healthy for you and what's not healthy, but maybe you want a night off. You want to enjoy some pie and some, you know, barbecue ribs and mashed potatoes with gravy, and you know you want to enjoy all that stuff sometimes. But you're allowed to. It's the
mhm,
buffet. You're an adult. You get to choose. I mean, when you take your little kids, you give them what you think they need. When they get a little bit older, they said, "Can I have some red Jello too?" And you put a little bit of red Jello on there. But then, as they get older, they start choosing what they want. Even sometimes you let them load their plate with junk, and eventually, though, when they leave your home, they're on their own and they're going to eat what they want. And they have to figure out what's healthy for me and, what's not. What do I want? What do I not want? So I think that's just what it means to become spiritually independent.
I love, yes, the idea of people getting to choose what spirituality or religion or any of that looks for them. A lot of your cartoons are very much like calling out, often, it's not explicitly white evangelicalism, but if it's talking about racism, white evangelicalism, homophobia, that is
Hmm.
pervasive in church world as a whole. But
Right.
when people's religions and choices are causing harm, like what are your thoughts on that?
So um, this is kind of a biblical analogy. Forgive me for using it, but it's a good one. My cartoons are kind of like a double-edged sword.
Mm,
They, on the one hand, encourage people, say people of color, First Nations, um, LGBTQ, women, children, heretics, all the marginalized people. They're encouraging to them, uplifting, validating, affirming the other edge of the sword, though, is where I go after any beliefs or system or policies or whatever that violate those freedoms that I think those marginalized people should be enjoying just like us.
Mhm.
So that's why my cartoons kind of have this sort of double edge. So some people love my cartoons and other people hate my cartoons. It's the same cartoon, but one is it's lifting up those who are marginalized, persecuted, um, rejected, and on the other hand, it goes after people and systems and beliefs that do persecute and marginalize and reject.
Which, from like thinking back to when I was a Christian, and even now, like just thinking about Jesus, that was kind of religious people hated him because he called them out, and
Yeah,
everybody else loved him. Like, and so
yeah,
you're in good company.
yeah, yeah. They say.
Now, yeah. Do you have any current projects you're working on or future ideas, projects?
Well, I just came out with this book here. Flip it like
Oh,
this.
that's right. I have seen, yeah, I've seen that.
It's my new cartoon book.
Flip it like
Loved by
this.
believers and atheists alike. No, it's my best of cartoons, and I
Oh,
have
yeah.
thousands, literally thousands of cartoons. But it's full of my best ofs, and there's like 15 never before seen. It just came out, so if you want to pick up it's wherever books are sold, like Amazon, Indie
Hmm.
Books, Barnes and Noble, etc. You can get it at your local bookstore, but people are having fun, accidentally leaving this in their guest room or
Oh,
in the
that's funny.
bathroom or mailing it to their ex-pastor or
I love it. That's hilarious. Yes.
but I'm continuing to do my stuff online every day. I'm
Hmm.
posting several times a day. I have an online community like you do, but mine's called
Okay.
The Lasting Supper.
The lasting. I
And
love it.
it's for people deconstructing, and
Hmm.
I provide courses, and there's interaction in our Facebook group as well. So yeah, I'm very busy every day doing this stuff. Yeah,
That's awesome. It makes my heart happy. Like we just had, before we were recording this, we just had, I was a teenage fundamentalist, the guys, Brian and Troy from that podcast, and they have a Facebook group that's just like a space for people recovering from religion. Rachel Hunt has been on here from the support groups. I mean, there's just
cool.
so many more spaces online and in real life for people who just, you leave church or you're just asking questions and you don't have anybody, and it can feel so isolating and so lonely, and so that's awesome that you guys are doing that. That's fabulous.
Yeah, it's weird. I started talking about deconstruction, which is a French. Derrida coined the word deconstruction, the philosopher. But I started using it in 2006 in reference to
Oh, wow.
questioning beliefs. Then I started talking more and more and more about it. And then in 2012, when I launched the Lasting Supper, I targeted people who were deconstructing and needed a safe place to do that. And we felt very, very isolated and alone out there in the world. Now it's everywhere. Like you say, there's tons of Facebook groups and other
Yeah.
communities sprouting up all over the place. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I had a church friend, and her mom was really bothered by like knowing the work that I was doing, being part of the Graceful Atheist. And my friend, I mean, she's still a Christian. She was like, Mom, when people used to leave the church, where did they go? She's like, I
Yeah.
don't know. She's like, yeah, this is just like creating space for people who before they didn't have anywhere to go. They were alone. And I was like, yay, thank you for like, speaking truth. But it is like before people just left. And I can't remember, it was recently on the podcast. I can't remember who said it, but like in the past, or like when you become a Christian or become some spirituality, religion, it's usually done in a group. There's some kind of community. You become part of a college ministry or youth group or whatever. Not always, but most of the time. But when you
Uh-huh.
start asking questions, often it's just you, or it may be
Yeah.
like you and one other person. And so it can feel extremely isolating. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. What you guys have been doing this for a long time. That's fabulous. I had no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah. Very long time. Yeah. And it's still going. So
Yay.
it's great.
I have asked a few other people this. Do you think there's hope for like American 21st century white evangelicalism, like churchness? Do you think there's hope for it to like change and be redeemed? Or do you think it's like, no, just dismantle it and we got to start back over? Like, I'm just, or, I mean, those are not the only two options, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I think the church is here to stay in
Mm-hmm.
some shape or form. The church has a resiliency to it that survives all kinds of programs and persecutions, and it has a, some people like say, well, it's no better than a cockroach, it just keeps surviving. But it could also be people's um, ability, resiliency to bounce back or to rebel or to meet if they want. Where we've seen in the past where the church has been made illegal and that there's underground movements start and so on. So I think the church is here to stay, whether good or bad, healthy or unhealthy. Wherever there's people, there's going to be some healthy expressions of it, and there will also be unhealthy expressions of it. I think white male American evangelicalism is scary. I'm I'm uh,
Mm,
I'm but I'm of the opinion that such right wing kind of conservatism is always a reaction to progress. And so I think as long as we progress, and become more open and inclusive and fair and just, we'll continue seeing the uprising of um, resistance to that.
that makes
Um,
sense.
I think progress is like the gas pedal, and conservatism is the brake pedal. And the harder you press the gas, the harder they're going to put on the brakes. And I think that's human nature. I think we're going to continue seeing that. That the more progress we do see, the louder um, the resistance, and even more violent the resistance might become, which is scary. So that's what I'm seeing happening. This evangelicalism right now in the West is a reaction to progress.
I was with family this weekend, and I have a family member. Most of my family is very conservative, Southern
Mhm.
white people,
Mhm.
and some of them fit the stereotype, not all. But one of my family members, he and I were sitting and talking, and he's just the kindest and gentlest
Mhm.
man, but he's so scared of. He knew the trigger words like wokeism. He's so scared of that. He's so scared of immigrant, so scared of just fill in the blank. And it was like, it was my first time seeing someone who wasn't like angry and mean about it. He was just scared of everything. And it was
Mhm.
just this like bizarre revelation of like everything. I kind of already knew this, but like everything that I have seen with conservative, especially like white males and women, like I was in white lady Bible study world. So like
Yeah.
women too, but is just afraid of everything, afraid of, like you said, progress, anything changing, anyone else getting rights that they haven't had.
Yeah.
And there's such this overlap of church world and conservatism, and
Yeah.
it's icky, very icky.
Yeah. No, I have friends or people in my family too that are super, super conservative in Canada. And they're otherwise lovely, lovely people, but they're scared. They have weird conspiracy theory ideas about what's happening. And but then I do know people who are conservative and hateful, like they're just
Oh
nasty,
yes.
and
Hmm.
would use violence or bullying to achieve their goals. Uh, and but that's like a fearful reaction as well.
They go into fight or flight.
Yeah, so we're seeing that for sure everywhere.
Last thing, do you have any recommendations, podcasts, books, YouTube channels, Instagram accounts, anything that you're like,
Well, it's funny. I was telling you earlier. I'm not a podcast listener.
Oh,
I
that's
get
right.
into 3 times a week for podcasts, but I have this weird thing where I can only do one thing at a time. So
Oh.
yeah, so I'm a painter, for example. So when
Mhm.
I'm painting, I can listen to music, but if I listen to a podcast, I'll be painting and all of a sudden stop because I have to concentrate on what's being said. So I might as well just sit there and read the book, which of course you can't do and paint at the same time.
That's true.
So, in fact, I tried Audible at Christmas time, and I
Okay.
worked really hard to get through one book. But just sitting there, I just have to sit there like a lump on a log, just staring into space, listening. So
Oh,
it's really
wow.
kind of weird. Even when I'm running, I run naked, they say, without any gear, just
Mhm.
my running clothes on, and shoes, but no, no headphones or music or anything. I just enjoy nature. So, but for books, I'm more of a nonfiction guy, but I do really love Cormac McCarthy, and
Okay.
he just came out with a new book called The Passenger. So I'm reading that right now. He's the one who wrote No Country for Old Men and The Road and
The
um,
Road. I've read The
all
Road.
the,
I haven't read his other stuff. That
all the
was,
Pretty Horses. Yeah, The
yeah.
Road, man, that changed my life. That book. But I read quantum physics. I just finished reading Isaacson's biography of Einstein. I read Slavoj Žižek, a living philosopher, right now. I'm reading, some mystical literature, like Rumi or Meister Eckhart or others. I find that when you're reading quantum physics, you're reading mysticism, you're reading philosophy, they all sort of start sounding the same at that level.
Mm, that's
So to
fascinating.
me, that's they're sort of they've sort of caught a glimpse of that one reality, and they're using their language, either mystical, philosophical, uh, or scientific, or whatever, to describe this one reality. So that's where I'm reading right now.
Whenever I deconverted, I was like, what are the things I have not learned? So I was like, I'm going to learn evolution. I want to learn
Yeah,
anthropology, like all these different things that I had just been gently nudged. You probably don't need to take that class or whatever. I wanted to learn these
yeah.
things. And the more I learned about certain scientific things, I listened to, I like audiobooks, Astrophysics for Young People in a Hurry by Neil deGrasse Tyson. I couldn't read the grown
Oh,
up one because it was like way over my head, but I listened to the young people's one and I was like, this is fascinating. And it was narrated by LeVar Burton. So clearly it was going to be wonderful. And I learned so much stuff. I was like, there is so much just
yeah,
mind blowing science. I love the mystical, like I love Rumi, and I've read a few other people I can't think off the top of my head, but like I love the feel of all that. And I love how science, there's so much awe-inspiring science that it was like I don't have to go beyond this anymore. Like
mhm,
there really is so much science that, which I don't understand a lot of it, but
yeah.
um, yeah, it's just there's so much awe and wonder in this world, and I love it. I love it so
One
much.
of one of my favorite books, it's in my top 10 books of all time, is Carlo Rovelli, who's an Italian physicist. Seven Brief
I've read
Lessons
that.
in Physics.
Yes.
What a
It was
lovely
short. I could
little,
read it.
yeah, lovely little book. Beautiful. Get the heart, worth it. You'll treasure it your whole life, kind of thing. But you
Yeah.
reminded me of something. When I left the church, I stopped reading theology. I am zero interest in reading theology because I was in the deep end. I read all the theology, right?
Mhm.
So what I discovered is I was so much in my head that I had to figure out how to get into my body. And so I become a little bit of a health freak, a little bit of a hedonist, what a Christian would call a hedonist, because I
Yeah.
enjoy pleasure and my body, and working out and running and breathing exercises and cold plunges and stretching and, like all these things, just get out of my head, just to get out of my head, because I lived in my head for my whole life and it got me nowhere.
Oh, wow.
Right. So I'm just enjoying, like, and Lisa and I go for, where we go forest bathing, where you go for long walks in the woods, and like it's just it's wonderful, and it's guilt free, shame free, fear free. It's wonderful, just being out of your head and into your body and enjoying life. It's great. Mm.
I love it. I love it so much. Well, thank you again, David, for being on the podcast. This was fantastic. I learned a ton and I really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Thanks, Arlene. Me too. I enjoyed it.
My final thoughts on this episode. So I tried not to fangirl, but I was really excited about this interview because his little drawings, I don't say little drawings, that sounds condescending, but like his very cleverly put together, concise, stick people drawings are so fantastic. They call people out for the foolishness that harms people. They're uplifting, they're kind. And again, they're just so clever. And so I really enjoyed this episode. I loved getting to know David more. I didn't realize how many he's written, multiple books. He also does watercolor and has beautiful landscape paintings. And he's just an artist and a mystic at heart. That plus just the wisdom and intellect that he brings, like it's impacted so many people, myself included. And I'm thankful for his presence online and the work that he has been doing for decades now. I love it. It was so good, so much fun. I look forward to just seeing more things the Naked Pastor will be doing.
The Secular Grace thought of the week is, it is our humanity that connects us. One of our bloggers, Jimmy, recently wrote a post talking about the X-shaped hole in our hearts. I've talked about this a lot, that the supposed God-shaped hole in our hearts is really our need for connection with one another. I truly believe that the connection that we seek is relationship, is love for one another. And I mean that in the least mystical way possible. To take the demystification, the deconstruction one step further, I don't think there's anything terribly mysterious about this. I think it just is our need for each other. Our need to be known by one another, our need to be loved by one another. Our humanity is our connection. I've done the interview with Holly Laurent from the Mega Podcast. That is going to be sometime in April or May. Also upcoming in April, I'll be interviewing Daryl Ray of the Recovering from Religion Foundation. And we have a number of community members that will be on the show as well. Until then, my name is David, and I am trying to be the graceful atheist. Join me and be graceful human beings. The beat is called Waves by Mackay Beats. If you want to get in touch with me to be a guest on the show, email me at gracefulatheist@gmail.com. For blog posts, quotes, recommendations, and full episode transcripts, head over to gracefulatheist.com. This is the Graceful Atheist Podcast, a part of the Atheist United Studios podcast network.